Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very exciting day in terms of a Polkadot roadmap update. So there is quite some news coming out today. We will talk about the Polkadot Hub and the launch, and there is actually a timeline now. We will talk about OpenGov Reform and two current initiatives that are coming out. We will talk about the current tokenomics discussion on the supply side and the demand side. And you will get a little bit of an update on the Polkadot launch party. So we have quite a lot prepared for today. If you have any questions, you can drop your questions in the chat and we will get to them. So feel free to do that. And yeah, with that, let's get to it. And I want to start by the Polkadot Hub launch timeline. So this has been taking quite some time, but we finally got updates on when exactly this is coming out. So Polkadot Hub is this place where new users, new developers can come in. They have balances in DOT, in ETH, in USDT stablecoins. There are smart contracts there. New developers can come in and deploy applications, and they can access everything that is available to them in Polkadot. All the chains are available through smart contracts. So this is a pretty good and big development. And we now have finally some new dates, and that is for Polkadot. Staking and governance will launch on the 4th of November. And then the Ethereum compatibility, so Solidity smart contracts, will come in the mid of December. So we finally have some dates, and there is also some preliminary dates. So the launch on Kusama will actually happen on the 7th of October. So we will have a Kusama release on the 7th of October for the migration. And then we will have the full release on Polkadot on the 4th of November. So we finally have some dates on that. And yeah, I think this gives a lot of clarity to all of us, because now finally all the teams that are preparing to launch are ready. It took some time. It's a little bit of a pity because the team is actually technically ready. The problem is that some of the bigger integration partners, let's say some centralized exchanges, they did not catch the update. There was quite a lot of pings going out, but they were too late, and so they asked to delay. So this delay was coming, but finally everyone is in sync, everyone is in tune, and we can finally step forward and have staking and governance on Polkadot Hub, and we can have full Ethereum compatibility on Hub. Okay, Cheaper is asking as a small DOT holder, what can I do on Hub? It's basically your starting point. You can have a wallet, you can hold DOT, you can send stablecoins. So you can just have stablecoins and send them to your friends. And then you can use the smart contracts. You can use MetaMask as a wallet. You can use the Polkadot wallet, Nova wallet, and so on. Yeah, that's it. All right, so this was the first big update that we have, Polkadot launch, and the migration is coming to Kusama on 7th of October, to Polkadot on 4th of November, and then full smart contracts are there in December. All right. Thank you, Eric. Okay, now, next thing for today is OpenGov, and there is some interesting changes and evolutions coming to OpenGov. So OpenGov has built this reputation of being hard to navigate and that it is not very structured and coherent in what it is funding. And the people in the ecosystem are taking it very seriously. They are coming up with mechanisms to improve the whole thing, to drive down prices, to increase the quality, to increase coherence. And so we have 3 developments actually going on right now. So yeah, this is one more question coming in for Hub. What will our tokens be locked when after the migration, the Polkadot Hub migration? Is there anything people should do now or afterwards to be ready? You don't need to do anything to be ready. The full migration of Polkadot Hub will take care by itself, so the update will not require anything from your side. All right. Okay, so Coming to our changes on OpenGov and the adjustments and OpenSync changes. So where do I have my notes? Okay, so we have three interesting developments right now. We have parameter adjustments, OpenSync, and then another thing. So let me get to them. OpenGov adjustments was a forum post that was posted today, and the intention of the parameter adjustments is to make the OpenGov discussions that are going on when people are debating proposals to raise the bar of the quality bar, to have higher quality proposals, to reduce the repeated submission of proposals where little has changed, and to nudge the proposals to really put in the effort to have high quality proposals. All right, so let's look into this. This is a forum post that was posted by Berto today, and I'm very happy that we can finally talk about this, because this is an initiative that is coming out of the Web3 Summit, where different agents from the ecosystem were coming together and debating how the quality of OpenGov can be improved and how the coherence of OpenGov can be improved. And so this is the first of two initiatives that are coming out of this. So looking at some of the details, we have a submission deposit. This is the amount of DOT you pay when you submit a proposal. The idea here is to increase it from 1 to 10. So you pay 10 DOT, that would be $30 right now to make a proposal. Right now, it is easy to spam OpenGov with a random proposal. I could just say, okay, I'm willing to pay $3 and I'm going to spam, put spam on the network. If I start to pay $30, $40, I might already be thinking about if I really want to do this. Increasing the decision deposits. So that is the amount of tokens you lock up to bring the proposal into motion. And this one is a relevant one. Increase the minimum support turnout. So support turnout is how many tokens overall need to be voting so that a proposal will can actually be approved. And the idea here is that we want to raise the stakes about how many tokens need to participate. And if not too many tokens are participating in a proposal, then the stakes are not high enough. So the idea here is increase the minimum support turnout, and it forces proposals with higher stakes to come on chain and to have more participating tokens. So this one is another interesting proposal. So decrease the max deciding referendum. It's a little bit weirdly worded, but what it means is that there is a queue of how many proposals can be negotiated and decided at the same time. And right now, this is a very high number. It can be like 50 or 100 proposals that you can negotiate at the same time. One can submit a proposal and it immediately goes into the negotiation phase. Now, the idea here is if there is a threshold and, for example, 5 proposals per track can be negotiated at the same time, it means that only the proposals with the highest support right now go into the decision phase. And that creates a little bit of a bar. It makes it easier for voters because they know they only will ever have to decide 5 proposals at the same time. And at the same time, if you're a proposer and you want your proposal to be decided, it puts the pressure on you to improve the quality, to reach out to voters, and to make sure that more tokens are supporting your proposal so that it can move into the decision phase. So this is a little bit of a callback into the previous governance system where there was also a queue and there was only ever one proposal decided at the same time. Now it is more flexible and it can, for example, be 5 proposals. And now this variable is actually being used for the first time. So, and then this one is making a referendum canceller easier to submit. So if there is some kind of spam on the tracks, then a proposal can be easier canceled. Okay, so these are the ideas, and then there's some parameter changes. And so the suggestions here are increase the quality of proposals, force proposals to think more about their proposals, and for voters have a higher qualitative time because proposals have a better quality and you only need to decide a certain number of proposals at the same time. Good. The next thing here is OpenSync, and this is proposed by JJ Rana. And the proposal here is, and I only have the tweet so far. So OpenSync is the idea to create more competition for proposals. So quite often there is a proposal where the idea itself is good, but maybe we are not happy with the way the proposal is phrased or how the price is set for the proposal. And then quite often the discussion goes with that the proposer says, yeah, we already have submitted a proposal, so let's negotiate it and see if it goes through. And then sometimes there is this time pressure where maybe voters want to have the proposal, they just want to have it at a better price, but they also feel the time pressure. And so the idea here is whenever a proposal is coming up and people feel the need that this should be, there can be a better offer on the table, immediately submit a competing proposal and have it as an RFP, so a request for proposals. So basically say, we come in, we want to have a better price, and we will make an open call for anyone to propose the same thing for a better price. So the idea here is get equal proposals and create a price competition between them. Yeah. And so JJ Rana has been pushing this proposal forward, and the idea is have some competition and build the infrastructure on the back end where you have people ready that are willing to be curators or supervisors of the proposal. So in essence, it is the same thing as a bounty, but it is framed in a little bit of a different way, and there is supervisors to the proposal. Good. Jiba, I see your question in this post says there are short-term changes, but I don't know which post you're referring to, if it's the previous one or the new one. So Jiba is asking about the short-term changes that are proposed in the OpenGov adjustments. That is absolutely correct. This post says there are some short-term changes. The idea here is that there is also debate going on for some longer-term changes. And these longer-term changes is what we have here at point 3. But I feel that the discussion is not ready. There's like still some discussion that people are preparing drafts, but this is an upcoming discussion. So I put this here as a little bit of a teaser to make everyone aware. There is serious debate going on in OpenGov, how to improve OpenGov, how it operates. Some of these short-term changes should short-term, like in the near term, improve the quality of proposals. We have new innovation going on in terms of how can there be price competition for proposals. And I would inspire anyone and motivate you if you feel like you have some ideas on how to long-term improve the OpenGov process. Right now is the time to think about it, because there is so much movement coming on and so much momentum developing in terms of how we can develop OpenGov. Okay, that was our part on OpenGov. We have adjustments, we have OpenSync, and then there is this open invitation to anyone to think about how we can improve OpenGov. And there will be more coming. Good. Let's look at tokenomics. There is an ongoing tokenomics discussion in Polkadot. And the part that most people are exposed to is the discussion about introducing a capped supply and having a step function reduction, so reduction in the inflation. So there is this forum post here by JJ Rana where he introduces the conversation. And after a lot of conversation and some preliminary research, the idea is to have a limit and a reduction every 2 years. And then there's 3 different proposals that are being proposed with different caps and different reductions. So there is the hard pressure proposal. This would create a halving every 2 years for the inflation. So from 120 million right now to 60 million, then 30 million, then 50 million, and so on every 2 years. And what we would eventually land at is a cap of 1.9 billion dot. And so there's a little bit of wiggle room here with a $2.1 billion cap. And the thought here is it's a little bit analogous to the 21 million Bitcoin that you will ever have, and there's also the halvings. Okay, so there's a medium pressure proposal. This is a little bit of a weaker pressure. It is a two-thirdening, so 1/3 of the inflation is reduced every 2 years, and this would result in a $2.5 billion cap. And then there's soft pressure with 13.14% reductions every 2 years and an eventual cap of pi billion dot. So this is a good discussion, and there is and I would say a relevant discussion. We need to understand how we can improve the tokenomics and the value proposition of DOT. So there is this preliminary temperature check going on. This is not a binding vote, but this is a temperature check to trying to understand how much support is behind each of those proposals. So the hard pressure, medium pressure, and soft pressure proposal, or keep the status quo. And right now, from the DOT that have participated in voting, which is 1.6 million DOT, the majority is in favor of the hard pressure proposal. All right. So this is the supply side of the discussion, but of course, supply can only is only one side of the whole thing. And so this is why I have been spending a lot of time on the demand side of the discussion, because having a DOT token only makes sense when there is a demand model. And so I was looking a little bit into what is the actual demand. How can we create DOT alignment? How can we find DOT demand drivers? And then just half an hour ago, I posted this model for economic growth incentives. So how can we create incentives to grow the economy? And so I'm going to present these ideas a little bit. So I did a little bit of data analysis, and I looked into what is going on chain. And what I learned is that 2% of all DOT has been captured by parachains. Only 2%, I would say. And what we see right now is there is a lot of supply for DOT, and there is very little demand. This is why we have a supply side discussion. But it's not just enough to limit the supply. There also needs to be an increase in demand. So what is the actual demand? We see that 830 million DOT are staked. That's about half. And some of that is staked by parachains. Then 11 million DOT are used by parachains. And that's like 0.7%. And then together with those 23 million here, we are coming out at 2%. But 2/3 of everything that parachains have in DOT, they are staking again. So most of the DOT is staked, and only 11 million DOT are active in the economy. Now, this is a little bit of an imbalance. So here I go a little bit into my theoretical thoughts, but then here I'm actually pushing out a proposal on how we can increase the demand for DOT. And so I think this graphic explains it best. Right now, about half of the DOT is staked, half of the DOT is idle, and less than 1% is active in the economy. What we instead want to have is that we have some amount staked, some amount idle, and a good amount in the economy. That would make sense because then DOT has a value proposition. It is active in different places of the economy, it's being used, and there is a real value proposition, there's a real demand for DOT. Right now, there is no demand for DOT in parachains. And so let's look into how we can change this and find a model. Now, in this forum post, I provide the actual numbers. So you see the actual numbers. This is the actual current situation of DOT. It's not a simulation. This is how it currently is. Now, what I'm arguing here is that if we just introduce a reduction of inflation, what we do is we still have the same distribution here, presumably, and we just halve these numbers here. So instead of 102 million DOT per year, we have 51 million DOT per year, and we have half the APR. Now, the question is, do we think that the situation will stay like this? Because on the one side, there is the argument, if we introduce a hard cap, it will it will harden the asset and make it more desirable as a store of value. That is an assumption. We can say some people will find this argument convincing, but we don't know how many people this argument will convince and to what degree. If they want to have a really hard asset in a store of value, they might want to choose Bitcoin. And on the other side, a hard cap is also not necessary. We see that Ethereum does not have a hard cap, Solana does not have a hard cap, and these are right now the most successful ecosystems that are out there in Web3. So it is not a necessary condition. It might be helpful to have a hard cap because it is a good argument for many people. On the other side, if we reduce the subsidy here, the staking rewards, we will see some amount of stakers saying this is no longer enough for me to keep staking in Polkadot. I will do something else. And so what we are risking here is that we are reducing one demand driver. And let's say the biggest current demand driver, we are limiting the biggest current demand driver. So what is unclear is how much demand will be created by a meme, capped supply, and how much demand will we lose from reducing the staking rewards, and how will those balance? We cannot know. The problem is we are currently making this bet. We are currently entering into this bet. It looks like the ecosystem is entering into discussion and committing to that. So when we reduce one demand driver, we might end up in a situation where more DOT becomes idle. We might end up in a situation where stakers say the marginal staker, so the one staker that makes the decision of where the equilibrium lands, like how does it balance out after the change, maybe the marginal stakers are not happy with 6.1% APR, but with 8% APR. If they say, if people on average say 8% APR is fine for me, we would end in a situation where we lose more than 10% of the 14% of the staked supply, and it would go idle. That would not be good, because it would mean that there is far less demand for DOT. There is an increase of 33%. There's a drop of like 25% of the supply that is no longer in demand, right? So idle DOT would decrease by a third. This would not be a good situation. The thing is, we don't know. We don't know because these are complex dynamics, and we don't know how much additional demand is created by the meme of a capped supply and how much reducing demand here will turn out. We will see, but we will see is not a good idea for having a staked asset. So let's look at how we can create demand. And I introduced an idea here, which is called economic growth incentives. Said in very, very simple words, I propose to incentivize growing the economy. I propose to think about how can we actually put an incentive into growing the economy. Because the situation that we have right now is there is a big incentive. There is a big incentive to stake, but there is no incentive at all to put DOT into the economy. Parachains have no incentive to capture DOT. And it's even more extreme. Parachains are disincentivized to capture DOT because they are competing with a 10% APR on stake DOT. Maybe in the future, currently it's maybe 12, 14, 16%, depending on how you do it. In the future, it might be 8% or 6%. So parachains have no incentive to capture DOT, and they're disincentivized because they're competing against 6%. Typically in a DeFi protocol, when you are, for example, putting DOT in a spot market or an asset in a spot market, you can maybe expect 1 or 2% that the DeFi protocol will natively yield. So anything that is standing against this 2%, if we're nice, is an impossible hurdle to overcome. So parachains are actively disincentivized to put DOT into the economy. And my proposal now is, let's flip this and let's level the playing field. Let's create a balanced playing field where there is an actual incentive to put DOT on parachains. And how do we do it? By giving a fixed amount of DOT to parachains, depending on how much DOT they have captured. So let me give you an example. Let's say we will every year we will allocate 10 million DOT per year to give to parachains if they capture DOT. My argument is that this will create a competition between parachains to capture the DOT. It will let them innovate on ways of how they can capture DOT. It will create new economic activity. And I'll give you an example. So let's say we put 10 million DOT per year to parachains to capture DOT. Every parachain could, depending on how much DOT they have captured, they receive a proportional share of that reward. So if we would assume the current situation, there is currently 7.3 million DOT captured by hydration, 3.1 million DOT by Akala, 1 million DOT by Bifrost, and 900,000 DOT by Moonbeam. Akala and Bifrost have more DOT, but they have it staked. So the DOT that I'm counting here is the DOT that is really sitting in the sovereign account and is really being used on the parachain for activities that are not staking. So if you look at this, in the current situation, 59% of all DOT is captured by hydration, and they would receive a yearly incentive of 5.9 DOT. Okay, what would happen? All the other parachains would see this, all the other parachain developers would see this, and they would say, hey, this is easy money, I want to have some part of the DOT, and they would suddenly start to creating offers to put DOT on that chain. So, for example, Mythical or Unique, they might be opening up their economies to not only be paid in Myth or Unique tokens, but maybe they offer additional markets for DOT tokens. If we look at Peak, for example, Peak is about the machine economy. Maybe they want to create additional markets for DOT so that DOT can be captured by them. And so what would happen is that parachains start competing for that incentive. Hydration, if they would forward all the DOT incentives to DOT liquidity provision, and they would be targeting maybe like 8-10% incentives, let's say 10% incentives, then they would be able to capture another 59 million DOT just by forwarding those incentives. So what happens is incentive is placed in the economy, and suddenly it brings the whole system into a dynamic where all the parachains will start thinking about ways how they can capture a share of this incentive. Okay, I have two questions coming in. Are those DOT captured by hydration a majority, or are they from treasury funding already? Good question. I don't know exactly how much DOT has been coming in. I know that hydration recently, through the incentive campaign, captured about like $250 million of value, and the incentives that have been given to them was 2 million DOT, so that would be $7 million. So $7 million in DOT has been placed with them, 2 million DOT, and what they have captured right now is additional $250 million. So I don't know exactly how much of that DOT came in through the campaign. I'm sorry, I cannot tell. How do we ensure they don't liquidate the DOT once received? Okay, so that's the good part. That's a very good question. I'm gonna conclude my thoughts, and then I'm gonna get to your question here, Summer, because it's an excellent question. So, initial situation, this is what it would look like. Then we see competition kick in, and at some point in the future, we would receive an equilibrium. We would come to an equilibrium. So staking is, in this future scenario, would give out maybe 8% APR. Now we know that if you have DOT in a DeFi protocol, the DeFi protocol makes a native yield of maybe 1-2%. We're generous and we're saying 2%. So that means that to be on par, to be on an equal level, and let's say this would only be DeFi protocols, then the economy only would need to capture a 6% APR. And by its own economic activity, it could generate an additional 1 or 2% APR. So if you assume that everything else, all the other protocols will compete on a similar level, what you can think about is that the APR that is captured in this segment, so in this economy, would be a little bit lower, maybe 6%. So from this, I calculated the numbers in reverse. So with a 70 million DOT incentive, if this sector would be looking for 6% APR to capture from the subsidy, it would pull in 18% of the economic value. of the dot. 18% of the dot, and that would be 283 million dot. It's an example, of course, it's a simulation. We don't know what the outcome is, but I want you to consider this. This is our current situation. This is the situation we want to go for. If we land a situation like this, it is almost similar to our initial situation in terms of how many idle dot we are. Right now we have 45% idle dot. Here we have 42% idle dot in this example. This is why I picked it. But in this example, we have a 25x growth of how much dot is being captured in the economy. How much dot is creating value in the economy and is being used in the economy. So there's a huge demand for dot. You have to assume that it creates some, like a small supply crunch, but it is also creating new narratives because suddenly protocols can tell the story of how they captured TVL, how they came up with some new idea, how they captured, I don't know, 1 million dot and put it to use, how maybe new protocols are launching. So from the perspective of a protocol, put yourself into the perspective of a protocol that launches. And they, let's say something simple, a DeFi protocol. Simple. Imagine they are able to capture 1 million dot. Now the reward that they would receive, if they receive 6%, is 60,000 dot per year. 60,000 dot per year is right now $210,000. If you are a protocol that is able to capture $210,000, you could do different things. You could just forward all the incentives to your users. This might be the most practical thing because it helps you grow further. Maybe you take a part of that and you pay your team. So to your question, Sama, maybe they rewards. This is quite possible. But it would happen in a way where this protocol is able to capture dot and they are able to liquidate, but they still capture more dot than they are liquidating by themselves. So they are pushing people, they are nudging people to put that dot with the protocol. Now people are thinking about what they want to do with their dot. So of course, mistakes happen. People make all kinds of stupid things in crypto, but there is competition between different protocols that are offering dot. So if a protocol would just take the rewards for themselves and liquidate it, they would not be sustainable. So over time, only the most sustainable, only the most economic value creating protocols will be the ones that sustain. And if they want to liquidate, that's fine because they will be creating economic value. So another way to look at it is here we are paying 8% APR for dot that is staked. It creates security for the network, but it does not do anything else other than that. Here we pay less per dot that is being put into the economy and into economic use. So the proposal here is to redistribute the incentives that currently are 100% in staking, not 100%, 85% in staking, 15% to the treasury. And the idea is now take some of those incentives away from the treasury, away from stakers, and give them to growing the economy. Give them to protocols that manage to capture dot. The proposal is let's not just incentivize staking, let's incentivize growing the economy. We do not need to introduce additional staking rewards. For example, what I did here is I reduced the staking rewards. So in this example, I took the 2 furthering, so the medium pressure proposal, but for stakers, it was a halvening, and then the 7 million dot that were left over, I calculated what would happen in the economy if we put that into the economy. And if you put incentives into the economy, naturally there is a pull effect because suddenly there is more attractive offers in the economy. Imagine we are growing from the 11 million dot we have right now in the economy to this 280 million dot. That's like 800, 900 million dollars suddenly in the economy, almost $1 billion being pulled into the economy. And the full narrative development of all these protocols now being able to pull in capital. I think this would be a huge improvement. So I would invite you to think about this. As a summary, we redistribute incentives from staking to economic growth. We create competition between parachains to capture DOT. We force innovation because each protocol has to compete against the others. And we create additional utility for DOT. Each protocol that makes an offer to put DOT with them has to come up with ideas of why they should be chosen against all the others. So they have to create utility for what you can do with the DOT. We remove DOT from the idle supply, and at the same time, we lower our cost base for incentives in the system. So I'm very open to hear your discussions and debates. You can go to forum.polkadot.network and look for this thread here, economic growth incentives. You can also post it into Google together with the keyword Polkadot. And I'm sure you can give it to ChatGPT or your favorite AI and ask economic growth incentives in Polkadot. Let it search the web, and typically it gives you these forum entries. All right. Okay, so this was our second discussion for today. We have Polkadot with the supply side discussion, which is being pushed by Jay Joanna. And we have the demand side discussion where I made a contribution here today. We need to consider supply and demand, and we need to create new demand verticals for Polkadot. So these things only can go together, and we should also not decide them independently, because if we just remove demand for DOT by reducing the inflation, but we do not create demand drivers where the DOT should actually move, it will just go idle, and this will be an even worse situation. So, okay, I see another argument here from Dotsama. The problem is we OpenGov don't have the capabilities to audit. I don't know exactly what you mean by that, but it's not strictly necessary to audit. It depends on what you mean. If you mean auditing parachains, you have all the measures of what you can do on-chain, and especially for parachains, there is block explorers, but it depends on what you mean by auditing. If I would assume the most value goes to the protocols that are actually making sure to deliver value, that are so transparent for users that they can actually look into it. Because if people are cautious, especially in Polkadot, they are very cautious about things. It would turn up if there's something shady going on. So yes, shady things are always happening, but there is also a self-cleansing effect that you again and again and again see happening in Polkadot. And compare it with the status quo. The status quo right now is we're just incentivizing not doing anything with DOT other than staking. So if we move the reward somewhere else, we can start with smaller amounts if we are unsure. But if we move the same incentives to a different place where we create economic activity, right now, we already have some winners in the ecosystem, and they're like hardly rewarded. We have hydration. We still have Akala, and people are still parking their money with Akala, which is interesting because personally, I don't hear too many news from Akala, but regularly when I check the news stream, they are working and updating and doing things, right? So there is capital with all of those protocols that have been working, and they would be the first recipients. So any incumbent that comes up against them needs to have a better offer, right? Some of them will be good, some of them will be bad, mistakes will be made, but over time, I'm expecting that this will create overall a better situation. All right. Yeah. The how to move forward, this is a good point. Thank you. How to move forward. I will push this discussion now. So I will push this discussion in AAG. I will go there and present it. I will discuss it with core developers, and then maybe come up with like similar to how there will be a supply side wish for change, maybe come up with a demand side wish for change and do a temperature check with stakeholders. I think these things should be implemented together. We need to create demand for DOT, similar to how we should cap the supply where there is money spent in the wrong ways. All right. Okay. This was this part. And then the last part for today is update on the Polkadot launch party. So what do we see on the roadmap about the Polkadot launch party? Polkadot launch party is roughly placed here between September and October. This is still the tentative date. What is the Polkadot launch party? If I could choose, it is the greatest community event that we have seen since the introduction of parachains 4 years ago. It is an event where we celebrate that Polkadot 2.0 is launching, where we're celebrating the Polkadot Hub is launching, where we are inviting developers and users to take another look at Polkadot if they have not paid attention for the last 2, 3, 4 years. They are invited to take another look at Polkadot to check out the awesome new wallets that we have, the awesome chains that we have, the awesome protocols that we have. Developers are invited to participate in a global online hackathon. We have just secured some prize money from the events bounty. So there will be prizes. Developers can decide to build a parachain and deploy it via Polkadot Deploy, our one-click deployment. They can decide to build smart contracts on Kusama Hub, getting ready for Polkadot Hub. They can decide to use indexers or development SDKs. They can tap into all the primitives that are there for Polkadot. So the invitation is really 1 month, a 1 month hackathon. It's not just rush it through a few days. 1 month hackathon where you can build anything in Polkadot that you want. Number one. Number two, physical events all around the globe. So we're already talking with teams and people, and everyone who hears about this says, yeah, we can do a small event. So there will be events all around the globe. You can host an event in your town. You can just meet with friends. You can say, let's meet. The idea is people can talk about what's new in Polkadot. They can learn from each other. If there is a bigger group, they can host an event or a meetup. They can have presentations. They can teach about everything that's going on in Polkadot 2.0. People can meet. If they're participating in the hackathon, they can recruit people from their area. They can show off. And because it's a 1 month event, it means if you're participating in the hackathon, you can show your stuff online. You can show your stuff at events. And you can get people excited. You can get a feedback. You can let people test what you're building. And there is a lot of crossover opportunity. Hackathons, meetups, and as a third pillar, a social campaign, a media campaign, a marketing campaign, where we show off everything that's great about Polkadot, where we roll up all the story. We start by explaining Polkadot, the parachains that we're having that are currently really rocking. So we have Hydration rocking it, we have Mythos rocking it, we have Unique rocking it, Origin Trail, Peak. Then I just saw new statistics from Frequency, which are pulling in a lot of active accounts, I think, so from social media. So all of these Polkadot launch parties. So these are the 3 pillars. These are the 3 pillars that are there for the launch party. We have secured funding. We are going into hackathon preparation, and we are starting to add more and more people to the Telegram groups for the organization. And so I think it just comes at the right point in time to get people excited about the Polkadot 2.0 launch, and yeah, see parachains like Peak, once elastic scaling is activated, scale up. So actually, it reminds me I should reach out to Peak and maybe see if they want to do an event together. Yeah, so these have been the updates. Quite a lot is going on. To summarize, Polkadot Hub launch, we have our timeline. Towards the end of the year, everything is rolled out in Polkadot. And if you already want to see it come to life, you can be on Kusama early. OpenGov is finally getting its act together. Small near-term adjustments raise the quality. OpenSync is intended to lower the price. And we have some more proposals in the pipeline that will increase the coherence and how everything plays together in OpenGov. On the tokenomics, the supply side discussion is advancing. First strides in the demand side discussion, and then we bring it all together with the Polkadot launch party. So yeah, thank you everyone for being here, part of the call today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for the reminder, Chipper. Yeah, we are pushing out Polkadot content, and we are also exploring what is happening in the rest of Web3, trying to give you like good judgments and analytics. So feel free to like and subscribe. And yeah, let me know if you want to see different content, like what we should